The floor is yours, Sam, to tell us what's been happening. I have to just say before you do that a number of years ago, 2017, I met Sandra Cohen, who was responsible for writing this project. It's an amazing piece of work which was brought together over a period of between 5 and 10 years it took. But small community doing this project is amazing. And Sam, will you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. As Zed has said, so I'm Sam. I'm the new Centre Manager here. I started in November last year. So actually, Monday will be just about my 1-year anniversary here. So it's been a really busy time. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit to start off with about the bid process. As far as I understand it, I came in at the very, very end, so I know it in the broadest strokes possible, but hopefully it will give you all an idea about how that's worked, how it's all come together. I'm going to attempt to give you a video tour of the synagogue. We've had some last-minute technical problems, but I think I've fixed them. If I haven't, then we'll see how we tackle that. And then I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes or so to ask me any questions that they might have. The bid itself started in the late 2000s when the community here managed to receive some funding from Historic England to restore our slightly unusual copper dome. And once that work had been completed and obviously funded by someone else, which is always a bonus, the Rebetson suggested that this was something we could do for the rest of the building, which was also in a declining state of repair. There were some small local history projects that were done that were funded by the National Lottery over the next couple of years. There's an oral history book out about the life in Leicester in the 1940s and 50s, for example. And also the Gilrose Grave Jewish Cemetery has been now catalogued. So all of the graves, we now know more or less who's in which one and a little bit more about them, which is really, really useful for my work. But eventually, as mentioned, under Sandra Cohen's leadership and certainly her backbreaking efforts, the bid really starts to come together to revamp the synagogue itself and try to expand upon the education resources that are here. At the time, the only really usable part of the building is the actual synagogue itself. The area I'm sitting in right now is the old schoolhouse and was largely unusable at the time. And the idea was basically to stabilize the synagogue building, provide some better resources for use in the education sessions, and that was about it. And these initial bids actually failed because they were considered by the National Lottery Fund and to be not ambitious enough. They wanted more. They didn't want to just invest a little bit of money and just keeping the building upright and not asking a lot more. So a consultant was brought in, a gentleman called Dale Lewis, and he helped revamp the bid alongside Sandra to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And basically it grew and grew and grew until the lottery fund said yes. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail during the video, providing it runs, about all of the changes that have happened. But there's been some rather significant extensions onto the building itself, into the center of the building and then a bit at the back as well. And the ambition of the activity plan, which it's my job to implement, also grew massively as well, away from just being, let's get a small number of extra school kids through and give them a better time. It's now much bigger, much more holistic, looking out across Leicester itself. Since I've been here then, so it's been my job to implement that activity plan. First things first has been complete overhaul of how the education sessions work here in Leicester. Previously, the sessions were essentially bringing in a group of children, capacity being about 40 children being able to fit into the synagogue at one time. A member of the community would essentially sit them down in the pews and talk to them for an hour or so about aspects of Judaism, show them the general geometry of the synagogue, talk about the ark and the scrolls, decoration, and that was more or less it, which is not the most engaging way to be talking to school children, just sitting them down and talking to them for an hour. Our new sessions now allow us to handle much larger groups because we've got because the schoolroom building has been renovated and connected better. We can now take half of the school group upstairs to the education room up there, and we can do object work, handling work with them. Meanwhile, the other half can be in the synagogue itself, and they can get a much more kind of engaging mobile experience, moving around the synagogue, looking at everything there is to look at and get things explained to them more personally. And these kind of more hands-on engaged sessions are really, really successful. The feedback about them has been very, very strong. And also it allows us, quite frankly, to handle lots more kids. So we can now handle groups up to 70, 80 kids, which is now kind of whole year group kind of size, because we can split them up. The space is much less of an issue. And we're able to engage with them, much better. However, a big part of the activity plan is making sure that we weren't just focusing on bringing in school children. So there's also lots of expectation that we're now looking to engage with the wider community of Leicester, bringing in lots of adult visitors, engaging with adult groups, adult learners as well. We've held over the last year 23 open days. The idea behind the open days was to do one every month, but obviously there's far more than 23 is far more than 12 months. So actually we've opened a lot during school holiday periods as well to try to encourage family groups to turn up. And these have been very successful. Over the last 12 months, we've brought in just under now 900 adult visitors, in addition to our massively expanded school visits as well. So didn't talk about the numbers for that. So as far as the school visits goes, the community used to do around about 2,000 school children a year. And in the last 12 months, we've done 4,500. And that really gives you an idea about our increased capacity. We've also held a number of talks here about the Leicester's Jewish heritage. So for instance, we had a former art curator of the Leicester City Museum, which used to be New York Museum, come in and talk about the German Expressionist art collection that's held there, which is of international importance and actually has its roots in a Holocaust refugee who managed to escape from Germany in a very timely fashion, and also smuggle a large amount of his art collection out of Germany as well. And he donated it to the city of Leicester. I'm going to be giving a talk next month about life in Leicester in the 60s and 70s, which is a massive period of change within the city of Leicester itself. And you really start to see the influx of the modern immigrant communities arriving in Leicester and seeing how that's impacted the Jewish community here, who up to that point actually were kind of the predominant immigrant community in the city, which has got some really interesting insight from people's experiences growing up in Leicester during that time. And finally, we've actually been working very closely with the University of Leicester and the School of Museum Studies, of which I'm a graduate. And we have got 2 placement students come work with us over the summer, doing some oral history interviews and composing a temporary exhibition based on that work that we're doing on Leicester in the 60s and 70s. So it's been a really exciting time. An awful lot's happened in the last year. Has worn me out a lot. I didn't have as many grey hairs in my beard back then as I do now. And I'm now going to look to play you a video where I give you a quick tour of the synagogue so you can see some of the changes that have been made.